Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Rachel Gianfredi. I'm really excited to have one of our customers, Gryphon.ai, joining us today. Greg, in this session, will be discussing how he and the Gryphon team integrated both Bombora Company Surge and G2's intent data into Salesforce to give his sales reps a prioritization report delivered to them every week. They've created account engagement strategies with their own technology so that they could take action fast and capture opportunities quickly. As it turns out, as you can see, they now see an average of 35% or more opportunities coming in from intent data every week, or excuse me, every quarter. Well, you may hear us
that'd be great. Every week, that'd be great. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Well, you may hear us talking a lot about G2 and Salesforce in this webinar. Don't shy away if you don't use either of those systems. We are going to be talking about a lot of different concepts that Greg has implemented to apply to any user of Bombora's Company Surge. So continue to stick around and we'll see how they apply to your own stack and practices. A few housekeeping items before we get started. We've muted all of you, so no chiming in. If you do have a question, please just put it in the chat and we'll answer them at the end of the presentation or throughout if it's relevant to what Greg is talking about. And we're recording this, so at the end, probably tomorrow or Friday, you will get an on-demand recording and you can rewatch in the comfort of your own home office. So as I said, my name is Rachel Gianfredi. I'm in channel marketing here at Bombora. One of my favorite things about my role is hearing about how our customers have combined our intent data with our partners and have seen great success. And Greg, do you want to give yourself a brief intro?
Yeah, so I'm Greg Acquavella. I'm the senior marketing manager at Gryphon.ai. I'm super excited to be here and talk about intent data because it is a passion of mine. I feel like we've been able to leverage it in ways that I've never thought imaginable. So I am super excited. Little background: I've been in the sales enablement and business intelligence space for 6+ years, and in just the general marketing space for 10+ years. But yeah, super excited to talk about what we're doing and the strategies that we implemented.
Awesome. Great to have you here, and thank you. And for those of you who are not familiar, Bombora is the leading provider of B2B intent data, which we call Company Surge. So on our agenda today, I'll give you a brief overview of what Bombora's Company Surge is, how intent data has impacted Gryphon's business, what their intent data journey looked like from purchase to implementation to practice, and how to help sales use and how they've helped sales use intent data for prospecting efforts. And lastly, we'll touch on a little bit of the different actions that their sales team takes to when actually working with the intent data in terms of email cadences and things like that. So you're going to be hearing a lot about Company Surge and the term Company Surge and intent data today. So let's define it. As in simplest terms, Company Surge intent data tells you which businesses are researching the products and services that you and your competitors sell. So we deliver value to our customers through Company Surge by helping them get the most out of their resources, drive pipeline, leads, sales opportunities, and meetings. And the way that we do that is essentially by monitoring online content consumption, say that 10 times fast, behavior across thousands of B2B websites. So for nearly 3 million businesses worldwide, we relate their research behaviors online, to intent topics in our growing taxonomy of 7,000+ intent topics to choose from. So an intent topic essentially relates to a B2B product, service, company, trend, and we understand a business's normal research behavior against those topics, which we call a company's baseline behavior. And so when there's significant changes in that baseline behavior, especially increases, we call that Company Surge. So we deliver our data to channel and a partner network of over 35 integrations, including Salesforce, of course, marketing automation platforms, Marketo, HubSpot, the works, including ABM platforms and contact providers as well. So today we'll specifically be talking about how Greg played a crucial role in implementing Company Surge for his sales teams and marketing, of course, as well. So now his story is interesting to me because he also receives intent data from G2. And they're partners, they're a great partner of ours, and their data is very complementary to Bombora's. And we'll get a little bit deeper into how G2's data and Bombora's works together. So from here, I'll pass it over to Greg. He'll share more about his role, what Gryphon does, and why intent data is a crucial component of his sales and marketing work at Gryphon.
Sounds good. So here at Gryphon, we really have one thing that is our message, and we want to break Pareto's law. It's also known as the 80-20 rule, if you've ever heard of it. And what this basically states is that 20% of your reps are producing 80% of your revenue, which is insane, right? And so we have built this technology that transforms these statistics so you can coach and upskill the remaining 80% of your sales orgs so that you're getting the best out of all of your reps. And so at our core, we are the leader in voice-driven sales technology, in AI-powered conversation intelligence, and real-time guided coaching. Now, some of those terms I know many of you've heard. One of the newer ones is real-time guided coaching. I just want to talk about this for a second because it's super cool and blows me away every time I see it. So if Rachel and I were on the call and I had our sales assistant, Griff, which is basically our real-time guided coaching selling bot, if he was on the call and Rachel mentioned a competitor, we could have a competitor card pop up with a SWOT analysis. We could have anything related to a sales process and push things directly into a CRM. And so it allows the rep in real time act on objections that they're getting, from their prospects, and they can use it as little or as much as they want. And the real thing that's what really is powerful about that is the transcription rate. So everything that they're getting, whether it's a competition card or a SWOT analysis or something like that, it's all based in real time, based on the transcript that is happening on the call. So that's a little bit about Gryphon.ai and what we do. And now let's get into basically the impact that intent data has had, on our business. So what I did is I analyzed Q1 and what happened in Q1. And so 40% or more of our sales opportunities were driven by intent, which is a very high number. Now, if there's a lot of marketing folks on, which I'm sure there are, you're probably wondering, all right, what do you define an opportunity as? Because, across many different organizations, people define those a little bit differently, depending on the stage that they're in. And so just as a baseline, we define opportunities as any meeting that is set, that's like a discovery or a demo call. So that's just as a baseline there. And then out of those 40% of these sales opportunities, a significant portion of those moved past that stage 1 level. And so what that means is that our sales team is really, fishing in the right pond, because a lot of these opportunities are moving through the funnel. In addition to the amount of opportunities, I looked at the pipeline that we had for Q1, and over 45% of that was contributed to intent data. So that's really cool. Some other things that intent data really helps us do is it helps marketing meets our sales targets, because as a marketing team at Gryphon, we have opportunity numbers to hit, we have pipeline to hit, so that's really crucial and plays a big role there. It allows us to build more buyer-centric emails, right? We want to make sure we're talking and really resonating with what the buyer is interested in at that time. And it also helps us align our messaging to the buyer's interests. So whether we're creating an ebook, whether we're doing a webinar, whether we're doing a white paper, we're constantly thinking about, the buyer and the interests, and we're looking at the intent data behind that to make sure that what we're, putting out is what the buyers really want. All right, so what did we do? So this is basically the heart of it. So a real cool stat from Gartner says, by the end of 2022, more than 70% of B2B marketers will use third-party intent data. That just kind of blows me away. And so what that basically means is this isn't going away, right? And if you haven't used it already, it's incredibly powerful. And so what we had at Gryphon here when we started, we had 2 separate systems. We had our G2 system acting kind of by itself, and we had the Bombora system acting by itself on one hand. And so for G2, we had automated emails that were triggered, And those automated emails would get sent to our reps or our BDRs directly. And if you're familiar with G2, any kind of signals on there, like if a prospect was researching Gryphon, if they were comparing Gryphon to another competitor, if they were searching a category, those all signals went directly to the AE in an email. And on the second half, we had Bombora. So on a biweekly basis, I would run Bombora search reports for our AEs and BDRs by territory and send them Excel sheets, Excel docs of their accounts that, are surging or have a high intent score. And so they would, look at those and kind of go through and work through them. And so we had that running for a few weeks, and we took a look at it and we were like, this can be optimized, right? Because there's two different intent channels going on here. Both of them provide valuable information, right? G2 is probably more lower down the funnel. I'm ready to buy tomorrow. That's where very high intent signals. They probably already know a little bit about, your market. Whereas Bombora has more of the full spectrum. You're hitting the buyer earlier on in the cycle so that you're, top of mind and you're relevant. So having both of those systems was really critical for us. And we wanted to combine them. So what we ended up doing was creating a report in Salesforce that is a joined report that has both data sets in the report broken down by account. Now, this was a big step for us because it allowed us to have Bombora data directly next to G2 data so that when reps are looking at it, they can easily see, which accounts are, going to have higher intent signals. And so this is updated, daily, depending on, obviously, Bombora, and on a weekly basis, we update just to make sure things are, clean and everything's in there. But if you look at it from a column perspective, just from the Bombora side of things, we have, the Bombora intent topic, the score, the category, and the industry. And then on the G2 block, we have the event title, whatever it is. And then we also have the city and state. And for the G2 side of things, the city and state is pretty cool because you can then, when your sales team is looking at that, they can look at the city and state and try to identify if there's a sales organization in that territory, and then go after people that are in that city, because you're going to get a much higher likelihood, if you're researching on SalesNav, to get somebody that is actually, firing off those signals.
So question for you, Greg, when you say that your SDRs, your AEs use this data, how is this implemented in from an onboarding perspective for your reps? Do they get acquainted with this data from the get-go when they start working at Gryphon, or is it something that they get later down the line once they've, made their mark a little bit and have their accounts?
Yeah, great question. So what we do is, this has been so impactful in our business that we have actually built this into the onboarding process for all of our reps, whether they're AEs, BDRs, anybody that is prospecting is going to be onboarded with this. And so we have a significant block that just goes over intent data and literally just goes over this report, where I'll walk through every AE or SDR, one-on-one, what this report is, why it's so important, so they can kind of hit the ground running. And the reason that we do that is because, when you're a new SDR or a new AE, you're probably thrown hundreds, if not 1,000 accounts in your name. And you sit there and you say, okay, now what do I do? Right? Am I just going to start calling down the list, or what am I going to do? And so the reason we implement this, and the reason that we implement it as part of an onboarding process, is these AEs and SDRs can, hit the ground running. They can, once they understand the report, they can start making calls on day 3 because they understand, where they should be going after.
Thanks.
Cool. And so that was basically step 2 in our crawl, walk, run approach, right? So we had that report in Salesforce. It was built into the onboarding process. And then as we kind of kept going with this, we realized that we could probably prioritize the amount of data that is in these reports already, because the amount of data that, Bombora and G2 provides is, extensive. And so we try to, update it with filters and parameters that we have set in Salesforce that match our ICP. But we wanted to kind of prioritize this in a way where reps can easily kind of take a look at this and say, all right, I'm going to tackle these top 20 today based on, what I'm seeing. And so we broke it down into 3 different priority levels. And so the first priority, the top priority that we say is like high intent signals, call this company right now, is when they're showing any kind of intent in both the G2 side and Bombora side. Because what that tells us is that they're on G2, they're comparing products, they're probably lower in the funnel, and they're also in Bombora, and they have a high intent score on a lot of our topics that are related to our business. So then we can, come up with a cadence and try to really resonate with that person. And so if you see data in both blocks, that is priority number 1, hit that right now and go. And so for the second one, second priority we have is to hit all of the accounts that just have G2 signals. Now we implemented this for a few reasons. Now our reps still get the automated email alerts directly from G2 when an event is fired, but we wanted to pull it into this report so they could see it side by side with the Bombora data. That way they can kind of triangulate their message a little bit better. And so this second priority level step is kind of a cleanup step in case they miss something. And so if there's a company in here that is in the G2 side, there's going to be a lot fewer of them, right? Because it's G2, they're lower down the funnel, they're comparing products. And so it's not going to be a very high lift, but it's still a critical part in that, second priority. And then the third priority, which is probably the most common that happens, is accounts that have 5 or more topics that have a high intent score. And this happens all the time. And so this is where we start to talk to our reps and we start to build out clusters around these topics that really kind of resonate with our ICP. So for the example of conversation intelligence that we mentioned earlier, right? We have, I think, over 50 topics that we are keeping track of. It might be 55 that we're keeping track of them. At least 5 of them are related or could be related to conversation intelligence, whether it's call analytics, whether it's speech analytics, whether it's sales data, whatever it may be. We can create a cluster around conversation intelligence. And what that allows us to do is build out multiple clusters and then match the cadences around that. And so that's just a really cool way to kind of, okay, hey, I have an account here that has, let's say, 15 different topics. What do I call them with? And so by grouping them into a cluster, it allows the rep to really kind of get granular with the data and kind of points them into, the right direction.
Awesome. And can you tell me how many approximately, if you know the number, topics you have selected for Gryphon's business?
I believe it's 54 right now. And so those are all of the ones that we're tracking. And Gryphon, we have an extensive product suite, and so we track a lot of topics. And so a really good example of this would be, if we have a cluster around conversation intelligence, but then they're also scoring high on, let's say, LMS or a learning management solution, part of that play that our AEs will run. Well, we'll talk about the conversation intelligence that we have, but we'll also note, we also have a built-in LMS, as well to kind of like separate that out. And so that's kind of how we're leveraging that. And the sheer volume of topics that we are, being notified on is kind of really critical for how our reps attack these accounts.
Awesome. Yeah. And just to reiterate what you said, so a cluster is basically a grouping of topics that relate to some greater theme. So you have, for example, a cluster of topics that apply to conversation intelligence that maybe apply to audience pain points and maybe some questions that they might be researching when they're looking for conversation intelligence. So those are the kind of topics that would apply to the conversation intelligence cluster, right? And then that's how
Exactly.
you help to inform what kind of message you put into your outreach.
Exactly. Yep. And so once they, have all of these accounts, they prioritize them. They say, all right, I want to go after, these top 20, what do I do? And so this is where, our own tech comes into play. And so this is where our reps are able to use our own tech, inside of Salesforce. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have this report in Salesforce, because it streamlines, their workflows. They don't need to be going out to a separate system to, fire off a phone call or fire off a cadence. So let's say if they wanted to make a phone call. So the first thing that they're going to see is in the bottom right-hand corner of that first image, you'll see the Gryphon dialer. So all they need to do is just click that. They could manually enter in their number right there. And they're off to the races. Or in the third picture, if they go to the actual contact record in Salesforce, our Chrome extension will scan the page for numbers and certify and see if those numbers are, okay to call, meaning they're not on a do not call list from a federal, state, or even internal, things like that. And so this makes it really easy because this workflow, as you can see, they're not going out of Salesforce at all, which really, just makes it much more efficient. And then similarly with cadences, because we have our own built-in cadence tool that we use internally, the same thing kind of happens, right? At the bottom, you'll see the little sales cadence button. You can click that, cadence pops up. And so for the example I was using earlier around conversation intelligence, we'll have a conversation intelligence cadence that they could then just drop somebody in or drop a group of people in. Or if they wanted to customize it a little bit, they have that, they can do that as well. And so the benefit of this is that they can throw people in a cadence based on, the clusters that they're seeing, based on the signals that they're seeing. And so it's just a very intuitive process and goes really well with what our current setup is right now. Cool. So what does this really do? So this, making email outreach relevant, with tailored messaging. So we can build highly customized messaging or clusters, which is what we were talking about, points of interest. And our messaging that we build our cadences around always focus around pain points, and they always focus around a challenge a specific persona might be facing. We find that has really helped move the needle with a lot of the things that we're doing. Because your customers and your prospects, they want that personalized experience, because you only have one chance to make a first impression, right? And so by just doing that little bit of research and that little bit of personalization in that cadence that is around a cluster with, a call out of something, we've seen that work so much better than just putting them in a generic cadence around, whatever it may be. So we find that this is working really, really well for us. Cool. So some of the key takeaways here. So two intent data sources are better than one. In our case, they're giving us different kinds of intent data, which is critical, right? G2 is providing different data than Bombora is providing us. They're both intent data providers, but we're using that data differently, and they're telling a different story. And one of the things, in addition, that to get this process kind of going, is you got to start small. And you can see, we had two separate systems in the beginning, and then we got sales buy-in. One of the cool things about that is I have one SDR on the team that the moment I showed him the joined report, he was blown away, because it was part of the onboarding process. And he was like, I can go make calls like tomorrow. And that was the same day he started. And it was like he was making calls within the first week based on this report. And so getting sales buy-in is key, because you want them to use this data, you want them to use this workflow. And then once you have that established, you can kind of advance the process and kind of develop the priority levels like we did in some fashion. It kind of goes to the third bullet, right? You don't want to just give sales the data, you want to tell them how to use it. And so if you kind of show them what can be done with it, it's going to make that process so much easier. And then finally, you want to customize your messaging to, match the intent signals and personalize your outreach, because that's where you're going to get the most hits. And so one thing that we did prior to this is we partnered with Bombora and G2 on basically a sales playbook for intent data. And it goes over everything that we just talked about in a little more detail. It talked about how we got sales buy-in. It talked about the way we prioritize this data. And it talked about some other strategies that could be used. And Rachel just chatted it in there. So if you're online, it's just a free PDF, go grab it. And that's a really, really cool guide if you're curious about some of the strategies that we're talking about today.
Yeah, awesome. And I actually think I put the link to the wrong, sent it only to the panelists. So link coming at you right now. 1 second. There we go. And so that's the playbook link. Feel free, like Greg said, it's just the direct PDF. No need to fill out a form or anything to download it. We'll also be sending it out with the webinar recording tomorrow. And a question came in, Greg, that I want to direct towards you, and I can, tag team this answer with you. But Brianna asks how you are attacking these accounts outside of serving them up for reps to reach out to themselves directly. Is there anything you can think about from a marketing perspective to do for the same accounts, ads, marketing, emails, et cetera?
100%. And so one of the things that, we look at is marketing is also using this data from a content perspective, right? So we're looking at it to, make sure you're staying current with what are, ICP, what they're researching and things like that. But this can be really significant for any kind of ABM plays that you're running. If you want to stay top of mind and you're running a comprehensive ABM play that involves, a multiple email, cadence, landing page, things like that, you can really customize a lot of this based on some of that data that you're seeing. And so that's really how the top things that come to mind. I don't know, Rachel, do you have any things that come to mind on your end?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a ton of customers who actually use it for ABM, and they leverage our data with certain ABM platforms. So we partner with most of the ABM platforms that you may know of today, including 6sense, Rollworks, Terminus, et cetera. So some of the things, the intent data helps to keep their segments up to date and make sure that they're targeting the segments or the audiences in their segments that are actually interested. On a week-to-week basis. So our intent data refreshes every week, and then those segments based on our intent will actually update in the ABM platforms. We've had some really high touch ABM plays where a customer of ours, Snowflake, they essentially create custom landing pages based on the intent topics that their customers are engaging with. And this is, of course, there's a lot of resource involved with that, but if there are some lower funnel topics that their accounts are showing intent on, then they know that they're really ready and they're definitely primed for outreach. So they will customize ABM landing pages and really do high touch with sales and marketing, account-based strategies there. It's probably aside from sales prioritization, ABM and marketing is probably one of the most commonly used use cases. Also, we can push our data into HubSpot segments as well. There's a new feature where it actually will surface not only accounts that are in your database that are showing intent, but potentially ones that aren't in your database. It will surface net new accounts. So it really runs the gamut. There's tons of use cases across marketing, sales, and even customer success as well. So
I was just going to say, Rachel, one of the things that we're doing, we're going to be rolling out is this kind of the intent on the CSM side, because it can be highly useful for whether it's upsells, whether it's renewals. Are they looking at another company? Are they interested in a new topic we haven't even thought about? And so there's a huge potential on that front too. So you're totally right.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of, depending on what industry you're in, we have, I know, Greg, you have some competitive topics in your clusters as well. So if you see that someone is showing intent on either a competitor's solution or a competitor's name, you can kind of approach them with a message that is relevant to, your competitive battle card or your differentiation and competitive advantage against other companies in your industry. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say exactly. One of the things too that I tell our reps, when we're doing this onboarding process, if a competitor does come up on the Bombora side or on the G2 side, when they go into that, demo, or when they go into those first calls, it might be good to know, what that competitor is, because they're going to attack your business with that lens on it. And so you might need to, try to reframe what that perspective is based on, the type of content that they are consuming. And so that's been a really key thing with us as well.
Awesome. And someone also asked if there is a strategy around selecting topics and topic clusters, and how you keep it up to date.
Yeah, so we have two ways to approach this. So on the G2 side, we have you can think about clusters in a very easy way in the G2 side, right? It's basically competitors. We have cadences for, if they're researching a competitor. We have cadences around the different categories that we're in on G2. And so that's a very kind of easy one, because those aren't going to change. The messaging that you have might change, but that will remain the same. On the Bombora side, what we've done is we are really able to identify these clusters from like a base level. And so we've identified our key terms that are always going to relate to conversation intelligence. Like that's not going to change. And so we know that is a cluster where we will maybe tweak the messaging, but we know it's going to be always up to date. And the same thing can happen around, whether they're researching a cadence solution or they're looking into, sales dashboards or something like that. And so that's kind of how I would answer that.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We will be sending out a follow-up, and if you have any questions, you can reply directly to those emails. If I can help you, I'm happy to respond, or I'll shoot anything over to Greg if he, is better suited to answer that. But thank you all for joining us. We would love if you connect with us on LinkedIn. We'll post our LinkedIn URLs here for anyone who would like to connect, but we appreciate you joining and look forward to being in touch.
Yeah, please connect with me on LinkedIn. Reach out if you want to dive deeper into this. I think Brianna actually talked to her a few weeks ago about what we're doing right now. So reach out, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to talk more about this. Again, like I love talking about intent data. So Rachel, thanks so much for having me on, and we'll keep using intent.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg.
All right. Thanks.